this party started. Hold on, let me find where I'm at and get things together. And we can get it cracking. Alright, family. Move you to the side. Move you up a little bit. Alright, hold on. Oh, shit, I forgot I'm out here stunting on them with the do-rag still. So forgive me as I get myself together. Last minute things. I had to give me some water. Oh no. Hold on. I'll be right back. Okay. We can get this back started. Oh shit, I forgot to turn on. Give me a second. While I do this. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Start. This party started. Alright, here we go. Front. Oh Lord have mercy. Here we go. Alright. Welcome to another episode of Soul Swami Live. If you're the first time here, what we generally do here is discuss healing in all its various forms. We try to address the healing of our mental body, the healing of our physical body, the healing of our emotional body, and the healing of our spiritual body. We do all of this in an effort to become the best version of ourselves that we can be. Making sure that we are making the choices for our lives and understanding that we are the co-creators of the reality that we are experiencing. And in an effort to also create a community of people striving to be the best, the most authentic version of themselves as well. So universal energy creating a safe space for us to be able to discuss the things that are important to us, for us to be able to do learning that is important to us, and for us to do the evolution that is important to us. You can catch this show every Tuesday and Thursday. You can catch Soul Swami Live every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Instagram. So make sure you hit that follow or that subscribe so you'll get the notifications on. I appreciate you as always, Ivy. Thanks for the love. You've been on my spirit a little bit lately too, so forgive me. I feel like we need to connect. And not even necessarily do some work, just talk and laugh and joke and all that good stuff. But I appreciate your support as always. Where we now? Alright, so the next thing we do generally every week, we do a little energy work and we focus on a different energy point or a different chakra that will allow us to learn some things to be able to support the energy in that area So this week we are on the solar plexus, which essentially is your stomach area. The solar plexus is good for your personal power, your sense of personal power. It is good for your self esteem. It is good for your strength, your ego, and your confidence. All these things reside in your stomach area. And you can always take a guesstimate on how well your solar plexus is doing by how your stomach looks, right? The color for your solar plexus is yellow, hence the yellow tint into the lighting. So if you are trying to do some work on your personal power, your self-esteem, strength, ego, or confidence, you want to try to incorporate some yellow into your life, whether it be yellow lights, whether it be you wearing yellow clothes, whether it be you eating more yellow foods like bananas or yellow corn, something like that. Those are things to be able to support the solar plexus. Interesting. If you are into essential oils, okay, what that is, you want to think lemon, cedarwood, juniper, ginger, lemongrass. All of those things are very good for your solar plexus. Next, we will do a little sound therapy. Then after that, we have our breath work, and we do some affirmations, and then we get started on the show. We get it popping. So now during this time, all you have to do is just really relax, focus on getting rid of energy that no longer serves you and attracting energy that will support the evolution of who you are. So all you got to do during this time is just relax. All right, next we'll do some breath work. This week we are going to do box breathing. That was in my spirit, so we're going to move with that. If you are unfamiliar with box breathing is simple as you breathe in for a 4 count, you hold your breath for a 4 count, and then you exhale for a 4 count. But during this time, all you really have to do is just be able to focus on your breath work, releasing energy that you need to release and attracting energy that you need to attract. And you just listen to the sound of my voice as I guide you through box breathing. So on the count of 3, family, I want you to listen to the sound of my voice and repeat after me. 1, 2, 3. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4. Release 4, 2, 3, 4. Breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4. Hold 4, 2, 3, 4, release 4, 2, 3, 4. Last time, breathe in 4, 2, 3, 4, hold 4, 2, 3, 4, release 4, 2, 3, 4. Now, as we sitting in the comfort and the relaxation of our breath work, I want you to take some time and incorporate these affirmations for your solar plexus, your stomach area energy. Incorporate these affirmations into your daily life and use them to support the energy of your personal power, your strength, your ego, your self-esteem, and your confidence. During this time, only thing I really need for you to do is to repeat after me. I am confident. I act with courage. I am a powerful being. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. I honor myself. I am confident. I act with courage. I am motivated, persistent, and successful. And lastly, I honor myself. Definitely got to do that. Honor your feelings, honor your spirit, honor yourself. All right, so we can get this party started. Woo, 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 woo. Here we go. Liberty, I appreciate you as always. Thank you for your support. I was gonna give you a shout out anyway. Not necessarily a shout out, but not to put all your business out there. But I definitely was gonna ask the soul family to make sure they add you to our prayer list as you navigate the loss of the matriarch of your family. I am definitely praying, sending you good vibes, all those good things that I can do. Just a reminder, you are important to my life. And it's funny because I was talking to Sassy Cat the other day, just checking in on her as she deals with her stuff that she got going on with her family. And towards the end of our conversation, she really did give you a thanks. You know what I mean? She gave you a shout out. She appreciates what you've done for her in her life and the energy that you bring in the time that you've been there. And it's funny, I told her, I thought that you all would probably connect because y'all both country. And that wasn't no shade. But y'all will be able to understand things about way of life, about navigating emotions that we may not necessarily be able to always understand as city folk. But I told her y'all, y'all country. And then I took it a step further and I told her that I told her thank you. You know what I mean? Because my homeboy Ali. Hey, listen, I do love to throw the country word around, but that's only because I do like the country. I like country girls. I like grits. Girls raised in the South, you know what I mean? So I like country girls for the most part. For the most part, from a distance. Hey, Toddy, you know what? We got to give you a shout out too. So not necessarily a good shout out, and not to put your business out there. But we try to we create that safe space and that vulnerability, that space to be able to communicate and get the support of people who are in the boat with us. So we want to make sure that we're sending you prayers and good energy and good vibes and all of those good things to be able to help you as you heal from a recent accident, and we're thankful that it wasn't tragic. It was one that you can walk away from, but still a tough situation altogether. But glad to have you. Glad you had some support for us, and definitely glad that you are doing the things to be able to help you heal and navigate your own situations. Now back to this liberty thing. So the other part that I did want to say, because it is a little bit ignorant though. So when Kat and I was talking, I told her, "You welcome," right? Because Ali brought this up, right? And he said it out loud, and low key I feel it sometimes, but I generally just let it slide. You know what I mean? I'm like, all right, I'm a big boy, I can let it go. So my man does not like his friends becoming friends. So like if I'm friends with him and he know another person and we meet through him and we start talking, he don't like that. He always be like, man, listen, you gotta be friends on your own time. Y'all gotta meet on your own time. So when Kat was singing your praises, I told her thank you. Cause normally I don't like my friends being friends. You know what I mean? Y'all want to be friends, y'all gotta do that on your own time. Y'all gotta meet in public all by yourself, not without me. You feel me? Cause otherwise, you my friends. And when y'all become friends, y'all ain't my friends no more. That mean we all friends. So I can't talk bad about you to her. Cause now she know who I'm talking about. And I can't talk bad about her to you. Yes. Not even just a friend hoarder. I like I got a little hoard in my blood. You know what I mean? I'm proud. I got one closet that I've been cleaning out slowly but surely. And it ain't like no tragic stuff, but it is kind of tragic, really. But I've been cleaning that out. But I prefer the word collector. I am a collector. That's all right. And that's all a collector is. It's the advanced version of hoarding with a nice, pretty name. You feel me? So I am a collector. But yes, I like my friends to be my friends, and y'all can't be friends. But because I thought that y'all would connect, I gave y'all a pass so y'all could definitely be friends. So congratulations. Also, this is your weekly reminder. If you haven't gotten your copy yet, you can get the 7 Spaces of Healing to be able to support the channel and the soul family and all that we do. You know what I mean? So with that, the 7 Spaces of Healing is definitely a book that allows you to be able to conceptualize 7 spaces that you need to create for yourself, and make sure that you place yourself in to help your evolution, not necessarily to help, but to support the evolution of you becoming the most authentic version of yourself. Those spaces will be a space of love, a space of healing, a space of solitude, a space of trust, a space of risk without judgment, which is very important, a space of accountability, and a space of forgiveness. That word accountability has been showing up pretty good for me the last couple of weeks, because it is helping me to understand that there is a difference between responsibility and accountability. And ironically, I'm shifting from, we talked about it on the show, we're shifting from this space of being responsible for everything, understanding that responsibility requires a response, right? And we're moving into the space of accountability, and knowing that accountability is essentially being able to identify what's at play. So being accountable for our emotions, being accountable for those things, and not necessarily feeling the need to have a response. No longer our responsibility. We're able to, I don't know. I actually been looking on how to set it up with my streaming stuff. I kind of thought of the poll question. So I guess I'll ask it now so people can take some time. When was the first Soul Swami episode? Woo, 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 woo. Now it's easy to find if you're a little resourceful, and depending on where you watch the show, it will be super easy to find. But If you are unfamiliar, then you gotta ask one of the Soul Family, and I'll drop everybody's name in the raffle. It's been on my spirit. Next week we're gonna do something a little bit different, so maybe we'll do it next week. Next week might be a good day to start doing it. Yeah. So ironically, I think this thing that we've been doing over the last several years at this point, but last several months, or the activity that we do where we wind up finding our words that we rebuilding relationship with. If you don't remember, several of the words that we created together were family, worthy, loved, safety, right, and free, right? So those are the words that we created together. But in conversation, there are two other words that we worked around. We reshaped or did a lot of work around too. And it's this idea of hope and faith, right? And the interesting thing about this is, in building relationships and learning people and getting to know people, it kind of just popped in my mind to begin asking these questions, right? And that question is, what is your relationship with faith? And what is your relationship with hope, right? So I took it to the brothers last night, and we were having a discussion, and one of the brothers said, in an effort to, because that I asked that question to someone, and they immediately said, you're asking the tough questions immediately. And I was a little bit confused because it ties into this idea of small talk. Like, a lot of people don't like small talk. And for me, I really can't understand that, because I'm like, how do you get to deeper conversations if you don't set the foundation with simpler things? You know what I mean? Simpler questions. But I've come to the realization that it might be one of those things that we have normalized again. So what seems normal? Being able to have here, Soul Family, we ask questions like, what's your relationship with hope? What's your relationship with vulnerability? What's your relationship with worthy? What's your relationship with safety? What's your relationship with any of these things, right? So for us, answering, thinking about these questions, having the self-awareness to understand what our relationship is with these words and how we evolve or reshape that, because we understand that each of these words create emotions. And from those emotions, we create feelings. We tell ourselves different stories. So it popped in my mind to be able to ask that. So when they said that you're asking the deep questions, I understood that was a very important question. And needless to say, this is funny too. After they said that, they ain't talk to me no more either. Which I was like, wow, I never knew that simply asking someone, what is your relationship with faith? What is your relationship with hope? Is enough for someone to ghost me or cut me off, right? I also recognize by asking that question, asking those questions really do make you hold a mirror up to yourself, right? And if you answer them from an earnest place, an honest place, a deep spot in your heart, it really does make you think about if you built your foundation of understanding of your relationship with hope and faith on positive experiences or negative experiences, right? So generally, if we think negative about hope, or if we think negative about faith, we can automatically assume and then really draw a direct connection to negative experiences that help shape that feeling or our thoughts or our relationship with those words. But here, we want to be able to recognize that we built our relationship with these words on negative experiences, and we want to remove those negative experiences and build our understanding and relationship with these words on positivity, on positive energy, right? So one of the brothers was like, maybe you can ask them, what are your flaws instead, right? And there's a couple of reasons why I don't ask that question. But one is when you start asking, for me, I think it's a good question. And I think it can show all those same things that asking hope or faith does. But what winds up happening is when you ask that question, a lot of times it changes the energy to more of an interview. What do you mean? What do you mean? Faith in the you hear me? Hey, facts. That is a twofold. What's that called? A pun, a double meaning. And I always it's funny because I've told you this a million times. I've always loved your name, and it just I don't know. It just does something to my spirit. I think it is double entendre. Yep, it is. I think it is a beautiful name for the church of who you are. You know what I mean? So I think it's a great name. I always love that name. There's a couple of names that it just makes me weak on the inside. Not necessarily weak like, oh no, I'm not strong, but I get so weak. Like that weak, that kind of name. I can hardly speak. I lose all control. Listen, that kind of weak. I just love that name. There's a couple of names like that, though, that do me like that, which is funny. Just like I feel like if her name ended in a sound, she gonna be headache. You hear me? You hear like Tatiana I'm sorry, but anyway, right? So one, I don't necessarily ask that question because it changes the energy to this interviewee type energy. Two, I told y'all one of my guilty pleasures is watching Kendrick. Hey, you heard? Hey, don't tell nobody I sang it either. You know, I'm like, me. What's not funny? What's not funny? All right, so I wound up watching Kendra G's singles show, right? Right? And in the dating show, she winds up asking, what are 3 flaws that you have? And people are oblivious. They really don't think they have 3 flaws. Or they say stuff like, I sleep too long on the weekends, or I like ice in my milk before. Oh, I forgot. Your name ended in a sound too. Forgive me, family. Forgive me, family. But you are a headache. I love you to death, girl. I promise I do. I tried to. I should have. Me, made my move. We used to have to do that in chorus for real. I've done a bunch of little things in my life. I've lived many different lives, right? Yup, I agree that people do have a default answer to it, but in watching Kendra G, they don't even have a default answer. That goes to show facts. Or not necessarily lives, but something that is important in building a relationship with someone is self-awareness, right? And what winds up showing is they lack self-awareness, right? So instead of giving this general question like, what are your flaws? I like to drill it down to this idea of what's your relationship with hope? What's your relationship with faith, right? So now when I think about this and I'm asking people this question, what winds up happening is now, what am I going to do with this information, right? You remember we have been functioning under this space of responsibility, right? So many of us are responsible for a lot of things, or we take on the responsibility because it's familiar to us, and we're understanding that responsibility requires a response from us, right? So that puts an extra weight on us, right? When we carry the responsibility of these things. Lack of self-awareness is huge. That's why I ask those questions, to be able to see, have you ever even One of the spaces we have is a space of solitude. One of the purposes of that space of solitude is to have that time with self, to have that time with God, to have that time with the universe, to have that time with the ancestors, to be able to reassess your foundational beliefs, to be able to reassess how you are moving through life, and to be able to reassess if you are satisfied. Because we learned about the happiness paradox, but if you are satisfied and content with the decisions, behaviors, and the life that you are living, right? So now that we ask these questions and people give us these answers, we have this space where we have to choose between responsibility and accountability, right? And responsibility requires a response, right? Now, the downside, the danger or the hazard of taking responsibility and having a response to this information is it winds up making us the star of the show, which is easy for us because in our lives, we are the star of the show, right? But when we always take on the responsibility, sometimes that makes us the star of someone else's show. And we're moving the opportunity for them to learn, or the opportunity for them to lay a foundation for forgiveness, or the opportunity for them to lay a foundation for love or hope, for them to be able to do these things because we are so comfortable with taking on responsibility. It's our time. I do this. I know I can do it. I got best set skills that we jump in that place, but it requires a response, right? So now I'm asking these questions. I have this information, and now what am I supposed to do? What response? One of my homeboys asked a very good question when he asked me a very good question as it relates to this. He said, so based on that answer, do you become more attracted or less attracted, right? And that's kind of the conundrum that we in, because attraction is also a response, right? So if I hear this response or I hear this response and I judge it from a space of if this is more attractive or less attractive, that is a response. I have to do something with that decision, right? But we understand that this isn't always our life. I understand what my relationship with hope is. I understand what my relationship with faith. I know how it's grown, how it's evolved, what it was, what it will be, what it's going to be, what it is, all of those things. So I understand that. So when I ask these questions, it is no longer my responsibility. I am not the star of the show. They are. Because it forces them to be self-aware and think about things that maybe they haven't thought about, right? And now it alleviates, it frees me from having to decide on if that's more attractive or if that's less attractive, right? So I slide into this space of accountability. And in accountability, all we have to do is be able to identify what is going on, what is being said, what's the dynamic, and accept that, right? So now when I get this response, you in the space of redefining your definition of both hope and faith. Yeah, I definitely wish you would have seen the episodes when we were talking about that, but we can discuss that. So let me know, what is your relationship with hope? I know I've told people before, and I've said this a million times, I firmly used to believe that hope was for suckers. Hope is for suckers. You can sit there and hope all day. Hope this gonna change. Hope that's gonna change. Hope this happens for me. Hope I learn this. Hope this. Hope that. And you will not get any of those things, right? What helped me reshape my relationship with hope is my understanding of faith, right? So I kind of always had a connection with faith because that's how I was raised. I was raised to be able to recognize how God or the universe was at work in my life, right? So I know that if you just have a vision and it's in alignment of your purpose and who you are, and you understand that things will work out for the benefit of you, that is a good relationship with faith. As long as you are intentional and aligned, things will work out for your benefit, right? So I wound up having that relationship with faith, and it was easy for me to be able to see that faith winds up being the direction, the way that the road that we are walking down, the vision that we have is sight unseen. So that is faith all the way. Faith is the direction, right? But hope becomes the path that we take to get there, right? So that new perspective, because we're learning that perspectives are the tools that we use to navigate these things, that new perspective reshaped my whole relationship with hope. So now I don't think that hope is for suckers. I think hope is for those who are filled with faith, because hope becomes the path that we walk to get there, right? So that's a little side note on that. Something else that kind of came. Oh no! So when we're thinking about this relationship of hope and faith, right? Then I thought we move from this space of responsibility to accountability, is being able to identify the dynamics that are at play. But then the next thing I wound up thinking about is, what are other words that we want to ask in building a relationship that would be beneficial to understanding what's at play in that relationship, right? And when I say relationship, I don't just mean romantic relationship. I mean platonic. Like, what kind of question would you ask if you're trying to build a friendship with someone? Hope and faith are good, but would you want to ask, like, what's your relationship with friendship? And you'd be interested. It'd be interesting how people respond on their experiences with friends, right? Or when you starting a business with someone. What's your relationship with the word partnership, right? We say these things, we ask these things because it's important, because we understand that each of these words, they don't call a spelling for no reason, but each of these words create those emotions, and from those emotions we create feelings, right? So the next thing I was thinking about, or not necessarily thinking about, but want to be able to discuss or bring to the attention of the family, is this idea of, this idea of expectations, right? Okay, so Liberty, I do see your message where you stated this past week has been a test of carrying what's not mine. And I think that that is huge. That is a always glass break. That is a moment of clarity. Like alcoholics like to call it the moment of clarity. You hear me? Because in navigating energy and really understanding our energy, one of the things that we really have to come to terms with is how much energy is not ours, how much energy we have that has been attached to us, that people have gave us, and how much energy is not ours. We've just taken the responsibility of it. You know what I mean? So I know I kind of sound like a broken record sometimes, where I keep on asking the same, like, you don't got nothing to do with that, right? Right. That's to make sure that you are functioning in that space of accountability, and it allows you to put down some things that you no longer have to carry, or you don't have to carry anymore. Right? You no longer have to carry, or you just don't have to carry for this section of time or this section of life. You may have to help somebody bear their cross again, but sometimes when we're moving in that space of responsibility, we don't know when to let go of their cross and allow them to bear it themselves, right? So I commend the self-awareness, right? I know the space is a little uncomfortable as well, right? Because we talked about how much we confuse the familiar with safe, right? So the familiarity of responsibility becomes safe for us. So when we don't have that responsibility, it creates new emotions that we have to identify. And some of those emotions are grief. Some of those emotions are loss. Some of those emotions are freedom. Some of those emotions are contentment. We wind up having to come to terms with the dual mixed emotions that we get from that. So I definitely say another word of prayer for you. And one of the more deserving people I know of a space, of having a space to be able to create and find freedom for themselves, is you. So I thank you. So the next thing, gratitude for you. But the next thing we're talking about is this idea of expectations, right? And specifically, I've been hearing a lot lately, and even in our conversations in the men's group, it wound up coming up. But something, I always say, I I judge the truth by how it makes my stomach feel, how it makes my solar plexus feel. Because when it's right, it feels right. The truth has a vibrational frequency that it just feels right in my spirit, in my atoms, in my mental. It just feels right, right? So when we talk about this idea of expectations, there's this new idea in a way to be able to navigate expectations in by saying don't have expectations on people, right? And that never quite sit right for me, right? Because how do you function in this world without expectations on people? Right? You got expectations from yourself. Sometimes we can be too hard on yourself. That's why we worked on grace. But how do you navigate the world without having expectations on people? That almost seems implausible. Not impossible, but implausible or improbable for me. I just can't understand it. And most of the time when you hear people discuss it, it's discussed from a terms of something that you do as an option, right? But not necessarily how do you navigate this life without expectations on people, right? So the thing that winds up being difficult for me is this word healthy. And I think that is the word that winds up quantifying this idea of expectations, right? I really do think that healthy expectations become the grounds or the plot of land for us to build our boundaries on. Not our barriers, but healthy expectation literally becomes the land that we build our boundaries on. So to have healthy expectations of your interaction with peoples makes sense, right? But the thing about expectations is we got to be careful. So this is why I understand that people say don't have expectations. I wound up seeing this post from someone I follow where they were talking about dating and how as of lately they've been meeting people who would rather text than talk on the phone, right? And we hear this a whole lot where people start talking about how they don't like texting and you need to talk on the phone and all these things, right? These expectations, right? That they have on people. I like talking on the phone. You need to like talking on the phone, right? So in my response, I just kind of think about that, where we have to be careful on when we create these new barriers, these new boundaries, right? Because in creating an expectation for self, we want to make sure that we still have room for other possibilities, right? So I might like verbal communication the most, right? And that makes sense because as humans, we do a lot of talking. But I do understand and value that there is a space for written communication. So as much as we might hate texting, texting is written communication. And some of the most moving things I have ever experienced in my life came through written word. As a person who loves to read, we read every Thursday with book club. and think about all the emotions and feelings and understanding and visualizations we got just from that written word, right? So we understand that I might prefer spoken language, but written language is just as important, and body language that does not use any vocalizations at all. Sometimes you can be in a room with someone and tell by how their body adjusts on how they may feel about some dynamic, right? So when we are establishing these expectations for ourselves that then expand to the expectations of people, we want to make sure that our expectations do not become the prison of our limitations on ourselves and others. All right. So now, it's a lot, family. I'm going through it. So last week we wound up, so over the last couple of weeks, we have still been discussing the 12 universal laws. It all started from us wanting to discuss the law of attraction. But in understanding the law of attraction, we need to understand the paradigm or the context from which the law of attraction fits in. And it fits into the 12 universal laws, right? So last week we wound up doing the law of inspired action, which is simply is telling us that to manifest something in your life, you must take aligned, intuitive, and purposeful actions that move you towards your goal. That's what the law of inspired action is. So that essentially is faith without works is dead, right? So once we have that, we have to take steps towards achieving that goal. That's how we bring our visions to life. That's how we bring our dreams to life, right? So what we also discussed what inspired mean. And inspired, simply for the context of this law, it means that actions that feel connected to what you want. So that means they're not random and they're not forced or fear driven. They're in alignment with the goal or the vision you have for yourself or your life, right? And we also understand that these actions come from intuition, not pressure. That means that nudge that we get, that is our intuition speaking to us, right? So when we feel that, we don't question why anymore because we trust ourselves. We don't go against it because we trust ourselves, right? So that's what that intuition winds up being. It's that little nudge. It's not pressure. It's that tiny voice. For some of us who hear it as a tiny voice, but it's that energy to make you move or do something that you quite didn't even think about, right? Then we also discussed the science behind that law. How does this law connect to scientific principles? We talked about cognitive priming, which is simply is once you make a decision or a goal or a vision for your life, your brain starts priming itself to be able to see opportunities for you to achieve that goal. So your brain start working for you immediately as long as you start taking those actions and you trust your intuition when you say that. We also talked again about that reticular activating system, which simply is the functions of your brain filtering out things that don't align or don't fit into the vision that you have for yourself. It filters out those things so you'll see more opportunities that support the direction that you're going in. We also discussed on what intuition was, and we got a simple understanding of what tuition was that allows us to be able to digest it as not mystical, but it is simply our subconscious noticing a pattern before our conscious does. And we also understand that 90% of our reality, 90% of the life that we live is based on our subconscious, not our conscious decisions. So our subconscious is back there working all the time to the point that it gives us intuitive nudges in the direction that we should go in. And then we also talked about dopamine and its effects on motivation. So when you make that goal for yourself, Your brain starts releasing dopamine, which is a chemical that winds up helping your motivation. So that is released to let you know that your physical body is chemically supporting. So it's not just make believe now. Your body is getting in line. It's chemically supporting the vision and path that you have for yourself, right? We also discussed the implications of, oh man, we've been talking. The implications of the law of inspired action. And that one, understanding that you cannot manifest through thought alone. It takes action. We understand that for the foundation. So you can sit there and pray and ask and do all those things. But at some point, you're going to have to use that God-given power, that universal given power, that ancestral given power, the universe connecting, whatever you want to call it, and take some action, right? You also, in that law, we begin to trust our intuition a little bit more. Sometimes our intuition, or us not necessarily paying attention to our intuition, has given us some very interesting experiences where now it becomes secondhand for us to second guess our intuition. Like when we look in our closet and we're like, I want to wear a red shirt today. And we tell ourselves, we're not going to wear no red shirt. That is a sign that you no longer trust yourself on a smaller scale. That's one of the reasons why when I do Reiki with people or we do some energy, I let them guide the whole process so that they can begin to start trusting themselves. And it's funny because I can be like, pick a sage that you want to use, and they'll be stuck in decisions, which lets me know that they have lost trust in themselves, right? So we practice that opportunity to be able to trust ourselves again. We begin to, so through that law, we begin to trust ourselves more. We take action from alignment and not desperation. So just because we're struggling right now, we don't just start taking desperate actions. We make sure we take actions that still align with who we are so that we can feel good about it. We notice more synchronicities in life. Again, we're moving from that space of coincidence because we don't believe in coincidence. We recognize that as a synchronicity. Well, life has lined up for us to notice, right? We grow in confidence and self-trust through that law of inspired action. Our identity begins to evolve in a way that we become the people who attract things that we want. We always talk about those people, but now we're no longer talking about those people because we understand the law of inspired action. And now we become those people who attract to us the things that we want, and not only want, but the things that we need. Understanding the law of inspired action helps to reduce stress. Right. Then we also discussed how, with all this information, how is it applicable to my life? What am I supposed to do with all of this? Because right now it just sounds like a lot. It can be emotionally overwhelming. Well, one thing that we can do with that is we can move from this space of overthinking to a space of doing, right? Understanding the law of inspired action breaks us away from this analysis paralysis. We are no longer stuck in analyzing the situation. We're taking actions, right? Intuition winds up becoming our guide. Our actions match our goals. We make sure that our action match our goal. We have the opportunity to break old cycles and patterns, old way of thinking, old feelings, old relationships that no longer align with who we are, relationships with these emotions that no longer align with who we are, right? Again, we begin to trust ourselves in ways that we may have lost that trust. Because again, we understand that trust is to be given, not earned. So therefore, we understand that when we break trust, there's also an opportunity to rebuild that trust because it starts with ourselves. So if we don't believe that there's any opportunity to rebuild trust, what happens when we break the trust with ourselves? We don't have a foundation or a space to be able to rebuild the trust with ourselves. So we rebuild the self-trust. We start seeing more opportunities that align with us, and we become more purposeful and less reactive. So we become more purposeful, meaning that we're moving in our purpose. We have good intentions. We move in alignment with what is right for us instead of responding to everything. We become proactive. We understand that we have the power to shift the energy. And because we have that power, and that's knowledge, we have the opportunity to utilize those skills more than other people. Other people don't recognize that they have the power to shift the whole energy, but we do, right? So that helps us become more purposeful and less reactive because we can see the pieces of the puzzle that most people can't see. All right. So this week we are going to discuss the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. What does the law of perpetual transmutation of energy mean? It means essentially that energy is always moving, shifting, and always changing. But with that in mind, we have the ability to transform lower vibrational energy into higher vibrational energy, right? So that's what the law of perpetual transmutation means. We have the ability to change energies, to shift the energy dynamics. That's one of the reasons why with the law of inspired action, we become more purposeful and less reaction, because we understand we have the energy, we have the power to change that energy, right? So in understanding that energy is always in motion, that means that our thoughts and emotions become feelings. Those feelings become behaviors, and those behaviors become our outcomes. So simple and in a real life example, negative emotions can easily spiral into worse outcomes. When we get stuck in that trap of negative emotions, we wind up completing the cycle of energy or experiences that feed into those thoughts and behaviors, so they'll be negative and it gives us worse outcomes. Or on the flip side, positive emotions can spiral into breakthroughs and new experiences and new thoughts and new relationships and all those things. So it has it is, as it works its way down, it can also work its way up. So anytime that we're stuck in that space of negative energy, we have the power to adjust that, right? The other thing that we want to understand as the law of perpetual transmutation is higher energy always transform lower energy, right? So the only way lower energy can transform higher energy is if you give it the power to do that, right? So when understanding, because other than that, is higher energy always, high vibrational energy always transform lower vibrational energy. That's one of the reasons why we don't match energy. We don't match people. We bring them up to our level, or we make a decision and move on without them, because everybody can't go on this trip with us, right? So we understand this, that higher energy consumes. I mean, it eats. For real, it eats the lower energy, right? So for a real life example of that is clarity can easily dissolve confusion, right? Clarity is a higher vibrational energy, as opposed to confusion is a lower vibrational energy. But once clarity shows up, confusion disappears, right? Or we understand that this idea of love can neutralize fear. Think about the times that you've been afraid and love showed up and how much it disappeared. The fear disappeared. How you are no longer worried just because you are in a space of love. You are sensed in love. You are giving love. You are receiving love, right? So higher vibrations consume. They eat lower vibrations. And again, the only way a lower vibration can do that, it can take over a higher vibration, is if you give it the power over you to bring you down, right? Also, we understand that we can change our emotional state at will. So it's not like we don't need someone else or we need something to brighten our day. We have everything we need to change our emotional state right now. We can do it at will, and to understand that we are not stuck in any emotion, even grief, sadness, worry, fear, distrust. We don't have to stay there. We don't have to live our life. At any moment, we can wake up and say, I no longer want to live a life that thinks, feels, and behaves like that is our truth, right? So we can change our emotional energy at will. Anxious and frustrated or overwhelmed, we can transmute that by simply shifting our focus, shifting our thoughts, shifting our movements and behaviors, and shifting our intentions. That is how we change that emotional state or that emotional energy at will. It is a shift in our focus. We no longer focus on the negative things. We no longer leave space for negative thoughts. We no longer take behaviors that reinforce these negative thoughts and focus. And we have intentions. Again, we make sure that our intentions are good for us, but we leave space for other people to have other intentions and incorporate that when we're making decisions for us as a group, right? We also understand with the law of perpetual transmutation that small shift can create big changes, right? That's the good thing about that. So we don't have to take giant steps. And it's funny because I just thought about a jazz musician, one of my favorite albums, and his name leaves me. Oh my God. But one of his albums is Giant Steps, and I used to love it. Love it, love it, love it. So small shifts can create big changes. So those small shifts creates new emotions. Those new emotions create new actions, new behaviors. So now we get new outcomes and a newer life direction. We're able to move in a new direction because we have taken those small shifts. And with this law of perpetual transmutation, we begin to understand that we are not controlled by that low. There we go. John Coltrane. Thank you so much. Because it's also the song that was playing doom 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 doom. But I think it's on the great Equinox, so it wasn't even on Giant Steps. But it is John Coltrane. I need to add John Coltrane to my Reiki list because I don't have none of him on there. But doom doom doom. I love that song. I'm sorry. But understanding that we are not controlled by low vibrational energy, as we stated before, at any moment in time, we can shift our emotional state by changing our focus, our thoughts, our movements, and our intentions. So as we talk about this law of perpetual transmutation of energy, it sounds mystical. Is there any science? What's the science behind that? What science supports this? Oh, and I love Naima. Naima is one of my favorite songs. Now, as a matter of fact, Naima is another name that I always I get me weak every time. I love Naima because of that song. I said if I was ever blessed with a daughter, I would name her Naima because of the John Coltrane song. Just the way that he translate love into musical sound, and the name is just so beautiful. That song is woo woo woo. So one of the first scientific ideas that support the law of transmutation of energy is the law of conservation of energy, which we talked about a million times. That is simply energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transferred. That means it can be changed forms. So we know this. We've seen stuff like water is a perfect example of energy that cannot be created or destroyed, right? We can boil water. That water will evaporate and turn to gas. It don't go anywhere. And if we put a lid on that evaporation, it'll turn back into water through the form of condensation. And if we get tricky, we can always put it in the freezer and freeze it. The change, the many different faces of water shows is a prime example, a tangible example of how energy cannot be created or stored. It can only be transferred. What'd you say? I haven't listened to that song in a long time, so I should become somewhat ashamed of myself. But I'm gonna have to get it in the system for a bit. I can't even tell you the last time I listened to that song. Probably the last time I listened to that Love Jones soundtrack. Well, the song I'm thinking of is on the Love Jones soundtrack. So, and when I listened to that, I definitely added Naima to it. But I love Naima. The next the scientific idea that supports this idea of transmutation of energy is, we've talked about it, the law of thermodynamics. One of the law of thermodynamics is energy. Thermodynamics simply is energy naturally moves towards transformation, right? So energy itself doesn't want to stay in one place. That's why we say emotions are energy of emotions, energy in motion. Even within ourselves, our energy does not want us to stay stuck in that one place. So when we transform it, we shift our focus, just naturally our energy wants to go in that direction, right? So easily the example of that for real life is tension. One of the reasons we do breath work right there is to be able to shift that energy from tension to a energy of contentment, calmness, safety, whatever energy we need to transition it to. Breath work winds up helping tremendously with tension. That's why we do it. So if we're tense from the day, which we definitely can be with all the things that we have going on in our lives, it's easy for us to be a little tense from the day. But we understand through the law of thermodynamics, or through thermodynamics, because they're more than the law of thermodynamics. There are several laws of thermodynamics. Energy naturally moves towards transformation. So energy wants us to reshape it. That's one of the things that we begin to understand, how much we are alchemists of energy. They make it seem like alchemy is only dealing with metals, but it is not. A lot of things can be alchemy, and energy is one thing that you can function in the alchemy, mixing different energies to create a new energy, right? Another foundation in science that supports this is neuroscience, and it lets you know that emotions are energy-based biological states, right? So emotions, that's why I say emotions are natural. So every time that we say emotions are natural, this is what supports that. Emotions are energy-based biological states. Why do we say that? Because emotions create electrical signals within our body. They create chemical messengers, and they create measurable psychological changes. We can measure, not with necessarily a ruler, but we can measure when you go from sadness to happiness. We can see that there is biological responses. There is a way that you move or function. There's a way that can be measured. So neuroscience supports this idea of transmutation of energy. We also neuroplasticity, right? And that's the flexibility, the ability to reshape. I was gonna say the pliability, but that puts us back in neuroplasticity. That in neuroplasticity, we understand that you can change your emotional state, right? So science supports this idea of transmutation of energy, right? The brain, understanding that in neuroplasticity, we understand that the brain can reorganize itself based on thoughts, behaviors, attentions, and repeated emotional stress. And that's eustress, de-stress, that's all that. That's good stress and bad stress, right? The brain can reorganize itself. So when people say that this is just me, that is a response that says that I have given my power away, because we already understand that me can evolve, me can change, me can be something else. When I begin to change my focus, the brain will naturally reshape itself, reorganize itself based on your new thoughts, ideas, perspectives, and the way that you want to live your life, right? The other way that we wind up support what other scientific ideas that support the transmutation of energy is cognitive reappraisal, right? And what does that mean? That is simply reframing your thought, right? One of the reasons we need a space of solitude is for this. Cognitive reappraisal, reframing our thoughts, creating a space that gives us time to be able to reframe how we think, the feelings that we get from these emotions, to tell ourselves new stories, right? We wind up shift our interpretations. Like we can wind up thinking about cognitive reframing our thoughts, is shifting our interpretations. It's mindfulness, it's gratitude, it's positive positive intentions, right? And when we do these things, we shift our thoughts or use these tools, we directly change the emotional intensity, how strong we feel it, the stress level, how stressful it is for us, our mood, and our behavior. That is how we wind up reframing our thoughts, by shifting our interpretation, including mindfulness, gratitude, and positive intentions. And that will directly change the emotional intensity, the stress levels, the mood, and our behaviors, right? So now that we know the science behind this, all right. Now that we understand the science behind this, we understand what the law means. Now we want to be able to see, how is this all applicable to my life? Like, okay, so now that we said all this and we understand all this, how is this applicable to my life? How can I apply this to my daily living? One, we understand that it's all emotional states, and we can shift out a negative state at any moment instead of staying stuck. As I said earlier, and I'll remind the family again, we always have the power to change our emotional state, because that power lives within us. It's inside of us. We carry it every day. Whether we're conscious of it or our subconscious is using it to navigate the reality that we experience, we have that power all the time, right? We understand, we apply this to our life, because now we understand that even small positive actions can change our entire trajectory. A small positive action can change the way we view it, can change the way we behave towards it, and change the outcomes we experience with it, right? It's important that we understand that. Just that small dose of positivity, or like we like to say, all it takes is a mustard seed of faith. That's that reminder of that all it takes, small positive action can change the entire trajectory and break us out of a negative spiral. So I encourage you, with this information, you make sure that you take that courageous step, right? We do that loving act, and we make that decision. We are not stuck in being indecisive. We are not crippled by analysis paralysis. We understand that we have the power. within us all the time so we can make that decision, right? Another way that is applicable to our life is we have the power to change our inner world. That is the interaction, the interconnectedness of all the energy spots: our heart, our mind, our sacral, our solar plexus, our root, our crown, our third eye, all those things. We have the power to change our inner world, reshape our relationship, reconfigure, recalibrate these emotions and the feelings at any time. So when I say that, that is for us to understand that we don't ever, in our entire existence, you don't ever have to feel powerless, because you are not. You have all the power, right? And your emotional and mental state are changed by choice and not chance. We have to consciously make the decision. I say this with a lot of things, especially with that word love. Love is a conscious decision. So when people say we can't help who we love, that is a person who has given their power away. Because yes, you can. You have the power to do whatever is necessary to change your world, right? Our emotional and mental state are not changed by choice. They are changed by choice and not chance. It is not a coincidence that this happens. It is not chance. It is the synchronicity of life that we experience, right? Lastly, and not necessarily most importantly, but just as equally as valuable, is we become less reactive and we rest in our power. So we begin to understand that everything does not require a response, because we are not responsible for everything. And when we are not responsible, we can still rest in our power and still be accountability, right? We become less reactive. It is not we allow people to learn their own lessons. We allow people to make their own choices. We do not feel as though we have to respond. We are less reactive and we can rest in our power. And we give off an energy of freedom and understanding and contentment, which is a good word, right? Especially when we put it in the context of the happiness paradox. If you are unfamiliar with that, we have episodes on the happiness paradox. But to simplify that is, those people who are chasing happiness are the least happy people, right? Because of the mixed signals they are sending the universe. You're essentially saying, I'm not happy. So the universe supports you not being happy, right? So we become less reactive. We rest in our power, right? That means life stops controlling us. We are not victims in our lives. We are the controller and the creators of the experience of our world, right? We begin to understand that emotions no longer overwhelm us. They are things that we feel, we navigate. We have the tools to be able to experience these emotions and not get stuck in any one emotion. We can, as they say, astral project. That's what that idea is also. It's not just a time or place, but it is an emotional state. We can shift between emotional states at any moment. We're taking our power back so emotions do not overwhelm us. We welcome them with open arms because they help remind us that we are humans experiencing life, right? We respond more thoughtfully and not just reactively. So we become honest people and not just people who tell the truth, right? We respond in a way that is thoughtful of the receiver, even when the receiver is ourself or someone else. We respond in a way that takes into consideration this person, whether that person is me or that person is you. We don't just feel like we got to get the truth out. Because what's the point in getting the truth out if it's never heard, right? So we feel comfortable in resting in our power, so we respond more thoughtfully. Lastly, hey, perfect timing. We about to wrap up anyway, so you were just in time. Literally, I just said lastly. So I thank you. Is Kat doing the battle tonight? So I can tell everybody to go over there too. I ain't asked her, but you might know. I should have asked her. But lastly, conflicts becomes easier to navigate. So we don't have to be avoidant of conflict. We understand that we are thoughtful people. We understand that we control our emotions. We understand that we don't have to be overwhelmed by those emotions. So conflict winds up become easier to navigate, right? Right? And that's how we achieve peace. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is having the tools to be able to navigate conflict in a healthy way, right? So family, that is the law of perpetual transmutation of energy, which means energy is moving at all times, and at any time we can change that energy. So next week, catch us Thursday night, we got book club, so we'll continue reading Changeling, which I've been loving. So by Victor LaValle. I told you it's a TV show on Apple TV, and seeing how the book and the TV show connects, I've been loving it. So you catch us Thursday as we continue to read Thursday Night Book Club. Great episode for some great show for some headphones, and just allowing somebody, just being able to relax and reconnecting with that child and you by allowing somebody to read to you. If we can't see you next Thursday, catch us back here next Tuesday as we start working on the law of cause and effect. Tuesday, I kind of have one of the brothers want to join us and be able to have a discussion around this idea of cause and effect, the law of cause and effect. So we're going to allow one of the brothers from Strength, Wisdom, and Brotherhood to join us, right? And understanding the law of cause and effect is every action has a reaction, right? And the brother that's going to try to join us, if we can make it out. There's going to be Andrew Smith, and I look forward to joining us. I look forward to him joining us next week. Again, we'll be here at 2 o'clock. Not 2 o'clock, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And before we go, remember we are on our solar plexus, and you are confident. You act with courage. You are a powerful being. You are motivated, persistent, and successful, and you can honor yourself. Family, I thank you for your support, and I'll either see you Thursday. You can catch us if you on YouTube and Twitch. Watch it for a game, and I've been playing this Phasmophobia, this ghost hunting game lately, which has been interesting and scary at the same time. So you might catch me doing some games if you're on one of them. But if not, I'll see you Thursday. And if not Thursday, the next Tuesday. Thank you again, family. I appreciate you. And I take it back that if her name end in a she ain't no headache. I take it back. Thank you for your support too, family. I really do appreciate you. I promise I do, in ways that my words can never convey. All right. So thank you, family. I'll see you later on. Peace.